Hey Optimancers, Chris here. In my last video I went over the Mercy Monk, and this subclass made me revise my general opinion of the monk. And so I am thrilled to see this subclass. So I'm on record, Way of Mercy Monk, I don't think it sucks. I said in that video I was going to give the Mercy Monk a try, and I did. Played a Mercy Monk in a one-shot on Tuesday with 5 other players. It was a combat-heavy session for 9th level, and these are my takeaways. First, I absolutely felt like the damage I was doing, well, not the most in the party, was contributing. So that is huge. Number 2, Hands of Harm worked really well, and that auto-poisoning ability is terrific. Now, I was lucky, because the things we were going up against weren't immune to poison. So, in my case, it worked really well. Of course, if you're going against creatures that are immune to poison, and there's a lot of them, then obviously that's not going to be so good. The third thing I found is that the good movement that monks get is actually useful when you have something effective you can combine that movement with. And that is something that I've been saying forever, and I definitely found it was the case in actual play. The fourth, I did actually attempt to use Stunning Strike. I did so largely to see what would happen because I keep getting told about Stunning Strike. And the results were pretty much exactly what I expected. I made 3 Stunning Strike attempts, 0 enemies were stunned. As usual, at least in my experience, the bubble burst of the image of the monk as a great controller. Now fortunately I was doing the auto-poisoning, and that did make the monk at least a good debuffer. And number 5, here's a takeaway, though, that I didn't think about in that video, and I think I should probably mention it now. When you auto-poison enemies, you should expect to be a target, and my character was a target, in the big fight, more than the other 5 characters combined. Even after I dropped to 0 hit points, they were still going after me, and only me. And this caused exactly the result you would expect, considering the defensive options of a monk. Of course, getting hit by friendly fire or hypnotic pattern didn't help. To pour some extra salt on the wound, next day I saw this post. I forgot I had taken Careful Spell. Just lecturing someone on how Careful Spell is useful on things that have no effect when they pass, like hypnotic pattern. Oh my god, could have made an autosave on that hypnotic pattern, may have very well survived. Still, despite that, I found the experience of playing a Mercy Monk was fun, and this is a huge win for the monk. And I may play a Mercy Monk again, I probably will. So far as I'm concerned, that is great for the game, and this is what I've wanted all along. I've been accused of hating monks, I've been accused of just trying to get people not to play monks. I've always wanted this. I've always wanted a monk I could play, and it was fun, and that I could recommend to other people, thinking that they will have fun too. And I have that now, thank goodness for that. But of course, in Tasha's we had 2 subclasses for the monk. We had the Mercy Monk, and we had the Astral Self Monk. And now we're going to talk about the Astral Self Monk. But before we get into that, let's take a moment to I want to thank some of my top level patrons. Patronage is huge for me. It made 2020 a good year for me, which I know isn't a common experience. And the people I want to thank are too numerous, but I want to thank some of my top level patrons today. Airhead, Awesome Face, Ben Potts, Bloody Nine, CJ, Cass Byrne, Christian Wyndham, Comfy Baphomet, Douglas Reynolds, Dash Panther. Thank you all so much for continuing to support me. I really do appreciate it. So that's the good stuff. Now let's talk about the bad stuff. Let's get started with the Astral Monk. So, when we select the Astral Self Monk at 3rd level, we get 1 ability. That ability is called Arms of Astral Self. This uses your bonus action and a key point to use. Now when we do it, enemies within 10 feet need to make a dexterity save or they're going to take damage, and that damage is equal to 2 rolls of the martial arts die. So when we get this at 3rd level, that's 2d4. It's not 2d4 save for half, it is 2d4 save for nothing. So this is really only going to be worth it if there's multiple enemies you can hit. Otherwise, it's probably not going to do more damage than the martial arts attack that you're giving up to do it. But of course, we don't know how many enemies we're going to face usually beforehand, so whether it makes more sense to spend the key before you go into combat, or it makes more sense to spend the key at the first round of combat, we don't know. We're going to have to take our best guess. One way or the other, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference either way. So we spend our key and our bonus action, and we get our Astral Self Arms for 10 minutes. And for those 10 minutes, we get a few benefits. The first thing we get is we're going to use our Wisdom modifier instead of Strength for Strength saving throws or Strength checks. Now, unless you go for a grappling build, this is pretty minor. We don't make a lot of Strength saving throws, and we're not going to be making a lot of Strength ability checks unless we're doing something like grappling. And even with grappling builds, probably not the way to go, as we're not getting advantage here. We're just getting the chance to use our Wisdom. Second thing, we can make unarmed strikes with our arms. Now, alone, this is no advantage, because these aren't extra attacks. These would replace our standard attacks, and they're not doing more damage than our standard attacks. Also, this is only unarmed strikes, so no grappling with the arms, which would actually be pretty cool. So again, if we're thinking that the Wisdom modifier instead of Strength is going to make us into a good grappling build, it's really not. Then we get 5 feet greater reach with the arms. Now, this can be tactically useful, especially if we're combining it with effective attacks. Otherwise, it's pretty minor. It's like our maneuverability. You need to combine it with something that's effective already to be really good. Also, assuming your base attack doesn't have reach, that sticks you with unarmed attacks, which do significantly less damage, like D4 when we get this, compared to up to a D10 with a versatile weapon using our dedicated weapon new feature. And so that is going to continue being a damage reduction until level 11 if we choose to use this. Then we get the one that sounds much better than it is. Wisdom modifier for attack and damage rolls with the arms, and the damage type is Force. Now, in regards to the damage type, Force is a good damage type, don't get me wrong. And if we're fighting creatures with resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, this is a pretty big benefit before level 6. But after level 6, our unarmed attacks are doing reliable damage regardless. So it's not really helping us after level 6. And as for being able to use Wisdom for attacks, this is again only for the arms, so not your other attacks. So if you want to go with straight Wisdom, that means you're going to have to do that D4 damage, or eventually D6, and from there, but D4, D6 for most of your campaign with all your attacks at the levels you're going to see the most play. And otherwise, we could be doing up to D10 with our attack action at least. So that really hurts when we're talking about a subclass that is largely considered to be based on doing good damage. Because if we want to use this, we have to do less damage. In fact, my calculations show that this is a good way to fall below the baseline for what is probably going to be the majority of any campaign you play. And in many cases, the entire campaign. So if we want to do better damage at low levels, when we really need it, we have to focus on our dexterity anyways. Now we can use the dexterity with our astral arms, that's not a problem. Wisdom is just an option. It just happens to be an option that we're not going to get use out of. Or if we do, we're going to be hamstringing ourselves. And that's it. So at 3rd level, I'm not even sure this is worth a key point for the average monk with your 16 dex, 16 wisdom to start. I mean, reach is okay, but we just don't have that much key at low levels, and this is likely not improving our offense at all, or our defense. And with a 10-minute duration, to be honest, we don't even know for sure if it's going to last until our next short rest. So we might even have to spend multiple key if we want this up. And when we do that, that means we're not doing flurry of blows, we're not doing stunning strikes, etc. So we pick this at level 3, and we're not getting a heck of a lot until we get to level 6. And then at level 6, we get Visage of the Astral Self. Now the first thing, can we just improve our astral form? No. we have to have something separate that is also going to cost ki. Why not just improve the arms? It seems like they just want us to spend more ki. And it's weird because if we look at the theory of design from the Mercy Monk, we see that as we go up in levels, the abilities just improve instead of costing more ki. And in this case, what we're seeing is the abilities don't improve. For us to improve, we have to spend more ki. And it's still, at level 6, that ki doesn't last very long. So we spend our ki. What are we going to get for it? Well, first, we're going to get Astral Sight. And this is at least circumstantially useful. In a darkness-centered party, like a party that has maybe a warlock that uses Devil's Sight along with magical darkness, this could be really good. It's kind of ironic that the Shadow Monks, you can't see through the magical darkness, even the magical darkness you create, but an Astral Monk can. Now, mechanically, this is basically the same as Devil's Sight, the invocation that warlocks get, and it actually has the same strange interaction, where you actually see worse in dim light than in darkness, because in darkness you see normally, but it doesn't do anything for dim light, which normally causes disadvantage on perception checks, and it still does. I don't know if that's the intention, but mechanically that's the way it works. Second thing we're going to get is Wisdom of the Spirit. This gives us advantage on insight checks and intimidation checks. Super circumstantial, minor benefits. And then we get Word of Spirit. Now, conceptually, this is quite different than telepathy, but mechanically, it's basically telepathy. Telepathy's okay, it's utility only. So now we're at 6th level. Our next ability for our subclass is until level 11, and we haven't addressed the issues with the monk at all. And as usual, we're layering on abilities that drain more and more ki. So we go from 1st level to 10th level with our monk, and because we chose Astral Self, we're going to suffer all the problems that the monk suffers, and in many cases worse than most of the monk subclasses do. This is often the entire campaign. And then at level 11, we get Body of the Astral Self. Now, I'll give the Astral Monk this one thing. This, at least, doesn't require extra ki. As long as you got your arms and your Visage already summoned, so you've already spent 2 ki, you don't have to spend any more for this. So at least there's that. We're going to get 2 things with this. The first is Deflect Energy, and what this does is you use your reaction, and then you can avoid some energy damage. And by avoid, I mean you're probably going to reduce it by a bit. Probably about by 10 points. So if, we're taking on, a green dragon that is appropriate challenge rating for this level, we would expect that their breath weapon might do 63 points of damage, and then we could reduce it to 53. But you know what? I'll take any reduction, so this isn't bad. The second thing we get is Empowered Arms, and what happens is, once on each of your turns, if you hit something with your Astral Self arms, you can deal 1 extra martial arts die. And this is a problem because level 11 is usually a level where things get big boosts, right? We're going to get an entire additional attack if we're a fighter. The Mercy Monk got significantly more at level 11. This isn't much at all. This is 1 extra die. And the die we're talking about is a d8, so 1d8 more damage at level 11. That is not enough, especially considering this monk has gotten nothing up to now, right? They've just gotten screwed right up to 11th level. They get here, you get 1 martial arts die. And my calculations show this isn't enough to even meet the baseline. So the Astral Self Monk is just falling behind here. So this is overall, again, a disappointing ability for the level. And then that gets us to level 17, Awakened Astral Self. And the first thing I'll say is, of course, this is going to cost you more ki. In fact, you have to spend 5 ki for this one. And what do you get? Well, we're going to get 2 more things. We're going to get Armor of the Spirit. That's going to give us a +2 bonus to armor class. Now, I'm going to say that that's pretty good. +2 bonus to armor class. That's probably the best feature we've gotten so far. Now, don't make the mistake in thinking that a 17th level monk is going to have a good armor class by adding 2 to it. It's not. The monk has probably already fallen significantly behind in armor class. Plus 2 armor class is still going to help, though, especially considering we don't have a lot of hit points, so happy to have it. And we get Astral Barrage, and that is whenever we use the extra attack feature with our attack action, we can attack 3 times instead of twice. So we're getting basically 1 additional attack around. This is something that we really could have used at level 11. At level 17, this is maybe enough that we're now doing baseline damage again, but the thing is that even if we're doing just over the baseline, that's usually the point where I would say that's okay as long as damage isn't your main thing. But in this case, I mean, I'm assuming in order to get over baseline that you're doing flurry of blows every round, and you're doing the awakened astral self on top of that. Then we can achieve baseline, and we're using basically all our ki on just doing that. And so we're not doing anything else. So this is just not enough. We have classes like, just a simple straight rogue can do almost twice as much damage around as a 17th level Way of the Astral Self Monk who is focusing on damage. So you are getting overshadowed in damage by people who are actually concentrating on it, even if they're not clever multi-classes. So again, we're seeing the problem with the monk is it's so far behind. 1 extra attack isn't going to cut it. So in the end, what we have is a disaster, just this mess. And so this is what it ends up looking like. So this is the Astral Self Monk versus the baseline. Astral Self Monk is the blue line, baseline is the red line. If you're not sure what I'm talking about with baseline, I've linked a video in the video description, but this is basically damage I use as a way to verify how much damage something does. And if something does below baseline, I consider that just bad damage. You probably should be finding something else to do to contribute to your party. If you're meeting or barely exceeding the baseline, that's okay. But I mean, as levels go on, you better be introducing other things that you're doing. So when I look at something like a tank build, for example, if it is actively protecting other party members by imposing disadvantage or something, then as long as it gets over the baseline, that's fine. But if something is supposed to be doing damage, I figure it should probably be doing the baseline plus another 50% above that. And again, that's not that hard to do. Here is where we are. We are actually over the baseline most of the time, but we actually dip below the baseline at level 11. And that is, again, using every single key point we have on Flurry of Blows. And we get that extra die, and we still can't meet baseline because we are a monk and because the subclass just isn't giving us very much. And then we're going to find at level 17, we're going to get above the baseline right to the end, but that extra attack, although it allows us to keep with the baseline, it is not a big gap at all. We're still talking less than 40 DPR per round. Like I said, we can do nearly double that just with a straight rogue. We can do well over double that with an actually concentrated build. So the damage here just isn't there. And there's nothing else going here. I mean, we're getting reach with the arms, not with our primary weapon. If we want to use our arms instead of our primary weapon to actually take advantage of the reach, then that puts us way behind on our damage per round. We're getting a couple little tricks, like we have a kind of a private communication ability and the ability to see in the dark, but there's just nothing here. So would I recommend anyone to play the Astral Self Monk? No, I really wouldn't. I don't think the Astral Self Monk is any better than the subclasses of monk that already exist. And that's not even to say that the Astral Self Monk is the worst subclass in Tasha's. I think it's amongst the worst subclasses in Tasha's. I'm not sure it is the worst. But the thing is that with Astral Self, we're putting it on a chassis of a base class, and that base class is the monk, which is already the weakest class in the game. So we take a subclass that's not that great and put it on that chassis, and we just end up with something that doesn't really work that well. And so I can have a weaker subclass from a better class and still make a character that is going to feel at least moderately effective. and in this case, we're just not going to get that. So this one is really disappointing. I'm really glad at least one of the subclasses in Tasha's for the monk was decent, because I have always wanted to have a monk in 5th edition that I felt was effective, and now we've got one. And I'm interested in trying monk again, just because I almost never play monks because they suck. But the Mercy Monk doesn't suck. Astral Self Monk still sucks. Sucks like all the monks did beforehand. And if you're looking at playing a monk post Tasha's, take a look at Mercy. I really think it is just going to be so much more fun for you. So, I'm disappointed that I can't have 2 good monks, but I'm still just so glad I have one. And in our next video, I want to take a look at the Ranger, and I want to look at the changes that the Ranger had in Tasha's. There's lots of them. And I want to look at the changes that happened to the Beastmaster Ranger, and those are significant. So I hope you'll join me for that. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next time.